this absorbs more of my mental energy than probably any other single thing. But it is so preposterously difficult that there are times where I wonder whether we can actually do this.
For those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $2,300. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So as pretty much everybody seems to know, Elon Musk did an interview with the Wall Street Journal yesterday, and it was very, very wonderful and lovely. And it's always, I don't know, it's always heartening to listen to Elon Musk talk because he just doesn't talk like a politician. He doesn't talk like a traditional, CEO of a company. He just talks like a human being, and a relatively smart human being. In fact, an extremely smart human being. So it's really refreshing to hear somebody talk like this. I wanted to go over a few of the major things that I heard in the interview. The interesting thing about all of this is really, except for his Starship talk, everything else was pretty much what we all knew already, but it's just good to hear reiterations about that. So I want to start with the Tesla bot. That's something that everybody knows and loves, at least everybody who watched AI Day and has seen the image of the Tesla bot.
With the Tesla autopilot or full self-driving, we're effectively, I think, creating the most advanced practical AI for navigating the real world. You can always think of Tesla as like the world's biggest robot company. Or semi-sentient robot company. So we have, the car is kind of a robot on four wheels, and so then, we could probably take that same technology and put it in a humanoid robot and have that robot be useful. So essentially, to have the humanoid part, we need to develop some custom actuators and sensors, and then essentially use the Tesla full self-driving or autopilot, or just generally speaking, real-world navigation AI in the humanoid robot. And I think this could be quite profound. I don't know exactly when we will get this right, but we will get it right.
The important part about this is what most of us thought, including me, and you can definitely check out an episode where I talked about this, and that is that the full self-driving software and hardware, both of those things, probably full self-driving 4 or full self-driving 5, currently we have full self-driving 3 in our cars. But anyway, it'll be a next generation version of that. But that hardware and then the software that currently is being worked on to drive cars around in the world is going to be modified to be able to be used by the Tesla bot. Now, this makes perfect sense, and they did mention this on AI Day, but it's just good to hear this reiterated and hear it again, that that's the way it's going to work. What this does is this gives Tesla a massive leg up. So I guess it's a robot leg up, right? Unintentional joke. So there you go. But anyway, it gives them a huge leg up on everything, really, because what they need to do is they need to hire some roboticists, and they already have been collaborating with people before, and I did an episode on that as well. But anyway, they're collaborating with people on the robotics elements, things like balance, things like arms, all of that kind of stuff that make a humanoid robot different than a car. But the main problem with robotics is not so much those elements, although they're very complicated and everything. The main difficulty is the robot interacting with the universe around it in a way that is, as Elon Musk says, semi-sentient, which means that it's not fully like a human being, but it's at least got enough different avenues of narrow AI that it actually is able to understand the world, and it's able to move through that world, and it's able to do useful tasks in that world. And that's already what they're working on with the vehicles, right? The cars, Teslas, are driving around right now. They're interacting with the world. They're interacting not only with other cars, but they're interacting with VRUs, or vulnerable road users. I can never say that right. Anyway, things like people, and people on bicycles, and people on motorcycles, etc. So those are the same kinds of things that the Tesla bot's going to have to deal with itself. It's going to have to deal with a lot of people. And of course, it's also going to have to deal with things like cars going across the street. And it's also going to have to deal with a lot of things that cars don't have to deal with, like interior spaces and stairs and things like that. But those are all things that are an evolution of what the neural network system that Andrej Karpathy et al. Are working on right now. And so this will be a relatively easy step to go from full self-driving to full self-control, full self-walking, or whatever you want to call it, with the Tesla bot. And again, if you have missed this, the panoptic segmentation I just did recently actually got kind of a thumbs up from Andrej Karpathy, so I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, that video goes into some detail about how incredible Tesla's work is right now in being able to segment out the world, label the world, understand the world around the car, around the computer. Those are very, very important things. And that's going to allow the Tesla bot, as soon as they're able to build it, it's going to already be substantially on the way towards being a valuable and useful robot. Of course, another piece of this, as Elon Musk has talked about before, is that Tesla is a robotics company and an AI company first and an automobile company second. So that's stuff that we've heard about before, but again, he reiterates it here. Secondly, as those of us who have been following Elon Musk on Twitter for a while know, but was said in very, very definite terms in this interview, Elon does not believe in the EV tax credit for anyone, with the caveat that oil subsidies also have to go away because it's an unfair, you're tilting the whole balance of the playing field when you give oil companies massive subsidies to make the cost of oil appear magically to be cheaper than it really is.
To be totally frank, at least no one at Tesla has actually brought up whether they care about this bill or not. I think if this bill happened or didn't happen, I don't know. Honestly, it might be better if the bill doesn't pass, because we've spent so much money. It's like the federal budget deficit is insane. It's like $3 trillion. Federal expenditures are $7 trillion. Federal revenue is $4 trillion. That's a $3 trillion difference in. If this was a company, it'd be a $3 trillion loss. So. I don't know if we should be adding to that loss. That seems pretty crazy. Something's got to give. You can't just spend $3 trillion more than you own every year and expect, don't expect something bad to happen. I think, this is not good. We're running this incredible deficit. Something's got to give. I don't know. This can't keep going.
What do you think the role of government should be?
I think the role of government should be that of like a referee. Generally, government should, I think, just try to get out of the way and not impede progress. Sometimes the criticism of Tesla is like, hey, Tesla gets all these subsidies. But it's worth noting that for the vehicle purchase tax credit, the $7,500, Tesla stopped getting that like 2 years ago. So whereas everyone else, I think, except for GM, still gets the $7,500 tax credit. So all of our sales this year and I think last year had nothing to do with the tax credit because we were no longer eligible because we'd made so many electric cars. Tesla's made roughly 2/3 of all the electric cars in the United States. I'm not sure if most people are aware of that. So Tesla's made basically twice as many electric vehicles as the rest of industry combined. And we don't need the $7,500 tax credit. I would say, honestly, I would just can this whole bill. Don't pass it. That's my recommendation.
What about the support though for the charging network? I mean, there are parts of this bill and no.
No, I mean, do we need support for gas stations? We don't. So there's no need for this for support for a charging network. I would delete it. Delete.
Okay, all right.
I'm literally saying get rid of all subsidies, but also for oil and gas.
And as I've talked about before, if you actually had to pay for gas, the actual real cost of it, including the carbon costs of, digging this stuff up and burning it and all of the crap that's going into the atmosphere that's causing global warming. If you had to add all of that stuff up, no one could afford to drive anywhere. So then it would just automatically be that EVs would be cheaper, even if you had to pay carbon caps on them until they're being produced with clean energy. But even with that EVs would be substantially cheaper than gas cars, than ICE cars. But so that's what Elon's saying. And he did elucidate a little bit more about how scared he is about the United States digging itself deeper and deeper into debt. Because essentially giving these tax credits, of course, we're paying for it. We American taxpayers are paying the taxes to enable these credits to happen. And yet we don't give enough in taxes for what the government is spending. And that has been going on for a very long time. This is not anything to do with the current administration, although they're continuing this process. But this has been going on at least since Ronald Reagan. So, this is something that's been building for a long time. But the problem is that you've got a massive, massive deficit. And by having these EV tax credits, it's just one more thing to roll into the deficit. Now, is it a huge thing? Ultimately, it's not that big compared to a lot of other spending that the US government does. But Elon Musk is right. This is something where you need to get your house in order, and the US probably needs to tighten its belt. Will it? Definitely not, because that's not the way politicians think. But Elon is correct about that. And I really love the way he thinks about the government of any country, not just the United States, as a corporation in the limit. So maybe we should call it something like Corpus Maximus or something. Anyway, I don't know. But anyway, it's just like a company that he says also has the, what does he call it? The monopoly on violence. And that is really interesting, because that means it's a company, but it's the only company that's allowed to commit violence on its population or anybody else's population. And that makes it different and makes it rather scary. That makes governments, even your own government, kind of scary, because if they turn on you, you don't have a lot of choice, because they have control over the violence, which is the military that pretty much every government in the world has under its control. All right, so enough about politics and difficult things. Let's talk about Elon Musk's haircut. And I'm sure a lot of people noticed that, and it was immediately commented upon in Twitter. And then Elon Musk came back and said that he did it himself. And I was like, well, there you go. That's Elon Musk for you. Here's a multi-billionaire, and instead of having some like foo-foo hair designer or something like that come in and cut his hair, he just does it himself. And I jokingly on Twitter said, oh, that's why you're so rich, because you're not paying the money to go to Great Clips. And if anybody doesn't know Great Clips, I love Great Clips. I go to them myself, but they cost like $15 a piece for a haircut, So obviously he's not going to lose his billions over that. But I just think it's really interesting and very human of Elon to just be like, look, I cut it myself. What do I care? I don't really give a crap about how I look. It's great. I'm happy. It's a weird sort of top hat, quasi mullet or something like that. And he's just satisfied with the way it is. So super cool for him. And then of course, Elon talked about Cybertruck.
Cybertruck. Cybertruck is going to be an incredible product. I think it may be our best product ever. I think it probably will be. It has a lot of new technology, so it's a hard car to make. But it will be awesome. And I think I've said before that we're aiming for volume production in 2023. And I will provide a more detailed product update at the TESAL earnings call early next year. I wish it could be sooner, but that's most likely when it happens. It'll be something really special, like just one of those kind of rare products that happens once in a while. That's really special.
I think it's really amazing. I'm getting more and more excited about the Cybertruck. He says it's going to be a kind of once in a lifetime product. He didn't even compare it. I thought he was going to say like the Model S or something, right? When the Model S was introduced originally. He's really putting it on a whole new level. So it is weird looking. He says it's going to be really, really challenging to build, but it's going to be a complete technological redo. So we all know about the 4 motors. We know that it's going to be using full self-driving 4 hardware. So that's really cool. And we know that it's going to have a whole bunch of new technology, but what that is, we don't exactly know. Hopefully we will find out relatively soon about what's going to go into Cybertruck, but it's very, very exciting. And he said volume production by 2023. So hopefully we might see a few of them actually get produced and go out the door to customers in 2022 at the very end of the year. So hopefully by 1 year from when I'm doing this video, we will see some Cybertrucks on the roads. And lastly, as the intro alluded to, Starship.
Man, Starship is a hard project. This is the biggest rocket ever made. It will have a thrust and mass double that of a Saturn V, which is the largest rocket to reach orbit, and is intended to be fully and rapidly reusable. This is a profound, if we are successful with this, which I I think we will be, but I don't know if we'll be there in 2022. I hope so. This is a profound revolution in access to orbit. There has never been a fully reusable orbital launch vehicle. This is the holy grail of space technology. It is the fundamental breakthrough that is necessary for humanity to become a spacefaring civilization. This absorbs more of my mental energy than probably any other single thing. But it is so preposterously difficult that there are times where I wonder whether we can actually do this. We live on a planet where the gravity is actually very strong. We actually live on the densest planet in the solar system. Our atmosphere is very thick. And what this comes down to is that a typical orbital rocket might be able to put about 2% of its liftoff mass into orbit. And then this is with smart people trying hard, maybe 2.5%. And no rocket, to the best of my knowledge, has ever gotten above 4% of its liftoff mass to orbit. Basically, create a rocket that can do about 4%, if not more than 4% of its liftoff mass to orbit, which hasn't happened before. So that means you have to have basically A+ across the board, incredibly efficient engines, incredibly efficient structure. You do need scale because there are some efficiencies of scale. That's why part of why Starship is so gigantic. Because, for example, the brain of the rocket really weighs about the same if it's a small rocket or a big rocket. So with a big rocket, you get to have the avionics be basically round down to 0% or be inconsequential in the mass of the vehicle. Yeah. Then you need to make an incredibly light heat shield. And just there's so many things that need to be done to have both the booster and the upper stage or ship be reusable. Insanely difficult. It's not like many super smart people have tried to do this before and no one has succeeded. And most of the time they've just given up partway through. But if full and rapid reusability can be achieved, it reduces the cost of access to orbit by a factor of 100 or more. So
more of
it's
us
just
could
like
go eventually.
Yeah, it's like an aircraft. Imagine if an aircraft or a car or any form of transport was not reusable. Imagine if you had to buy a new plane every time you flew. That would make air flight insanely expensive, or a car. If you had to get a new car every time you drove somewhere, that would be unbelievably expensive as opposed to simply refueling it. So we've got to get rockets to the point where we simply refuel the rocket and we don't throw it away. And with Falcon 9, we've managed to make the booster reusable and the fairing, the nose cone reusable, but not the upper stage. So we've made I think the most progress in reusability that has ever been done. But with Starship, we're hoping to make the whole thing reusable. This is profound. Like I said, it is the difference between humanity being a single planet species and a multi-planet species. It's really that big of a deal.
So yeah, this was really interesting listening to Elon talk and dig into Starship a little bit more. This was my favorite part of the interview because this got into some stuff that he really has never expressed fully before. But it's some things that all of us who are worried about Starship or who follow Starship, we stay up at night thinking about these things, or at least I do. Maybe I'm just weird about that. But I worry about their ability to make Starship happen. As Elon Musk says, it's an insane level of challenge, and a lot of very smart people for the last 100+ years have been trying really hard to figure out how to make this work, and pretty much everybody has given up. And fingers crossed that Elon has not only himself, but he's collected a team of not only insanely smart people, but insanely smart and highly motivated people, and that they will collectively be able to solve this problem. Because he's right. If you can get something like this into orbit and reuse it within a day or two, or even a week, honestly, without having to pay too much money to refurbish it, that of course was the problem with the space shuttle. It was reusable to an extent, but it was massively expensive and really, really slow. So it didn't really do the job it was intended to do. And part of that was the design compromises that were made during the time when it was developed. Long story, and if anybody's interested, I'll be happy to do an episode about that. But anyway, Starship is designed to be reused economically, which means not a lot of refurbishment, and quickly. So think of it more like a jet plane. I think a car is a bad analogy because cars are just too reusable. But a jet plane is something where it's flown a couple of times a day. It goes from place A to place B. It gets a lot of maintenance, and they check it out and make sure everything's working properly. And then it flies from that place back again or to someplace else. So, something that flies once a day or once a week is much more analogous to what the Starship would be. But if they can get this working, it's going to change the world. As Elon says, it will make us from a one planet species to a multi-planet species. And Elon, always talks about how sucky the Earth is, how it's the densest planet. It has a super thick atmosphere. It's very, very difficult to get off. You can only get about 2% of the gross weight of the vehicle into orbit as an effective payload. So almost all of it is fuel and the structure of the rocket itself. And so that means that, he said that he wants to get it to 4% as opposed to 2% and have it be reusable. And if that is the case, then that's fantastic. I, of course, am I kind of like Earth. I don't think we would have a very fun time if it was less dense and we had a less thick atmosphere. It would probably be really bad for us. So I'm going to be happy that we have what we have. But he is correct that if the Earth was even only a little bit heavier, it would be almost impossible to get off the Earth. If the Earth was the gravity well of Mars, it would be a whole lot easier. It's actually super easy to get something off of Mars. The problem with that is if you have no atmosphere and you have no heat and you have no plate tectonics, and that's all problems, which is why I was saying Earth isn't so bad. But anyway, it was very interesting to listen to Elon Musk admit that he wasn't absolutely confident this was going to work. He said, this is a super hard thing to do. We're trying our best, but it's really, really challenging and really difficult. And I'm all about that, right? Don't lie to us. Don't say, oh, absolutely, this is going to work. I want to hear people be honest about this. This is a challenge. This is something that's never been done before. This is like going and doing a research project with massive repercussions. You don't know. I've done a lot of research in my time as a professor, very low stakes research, but some of it just doesn't work out. You do it and you're like, oh, well, that sucked. That didn't work so well. So, Elon's doing that with a multi-billion-dollar project as opposed to something that costs nothing except for some time of an academic that's doing something. He's doing something with a lot more stakes and a lot of people and a lot of money and a lot of consequence involved. But it is a research project, and when you do a research project, fundamental research, you don't know if it's going to work from the get-go. Now, he seems relatively confident, and he's like, look, every time we iterate on this, I get more and more confident that this is going to work, but I don't know. And so it'll be really interesting. I think 2022 is going to be a fascinating year. If we see Starship even go to orbit one time and come back and land successfully, the Super Heavy booster and the Starship, if both of those things can land successfully one time next year, by this time next year, that is going to be world changing. If it doesn't happen by the end of next year, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Although I think Elon is worried about, as he's talked about with Starlink, he's really stressing about the economics of SpaceX if they can't get the Starship working relatively soon, but I think he can cover the costs of a lot of this stuff. If they don't get to orbit with Starship, do that same thing by the end of 2023, I think that we're really talking about problems. But if it doesn't happen by the next 12 months, it's okay. But it would be amazing. It'll be earth-shattering, right? The thing taking off Earth. But anyway, it'll be earth-shattering if they can actually get to orbit and land these things successfully. Those are two huge tasks. I think getting to orbit will not be as challenging, and I think the Super Heavy coming back and landing will also be something that they can manage within a year. It's going to be Starship. It's that re-entry from space into the atmosphere that's going to be the really, really big challenge. Coming in screaming at that kind of speed is just insane, and really nobody has ever done that before. But if they can manage that, then Starship is going to change the world, and all power to Elon for making that happen. All right, so again, like I said, this was a really fascinating interview. It didn't really say anything super new that we hadn't all heard before, at least if we're following Elon all the time. But it's really good to hear them all sort of reiterated. It's really good to hear them compressed into one small time frame. And it's really good to hear him reiterate some of the worries and also good things that we all think about a lot. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it fun and interesting. I certainly, I love watching Elon Musk talk, so why not? So anyway, I enjoyed doing this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it, because YouTube's algorithm works that way. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much. It's been wonderful talking to you all. I've got just so many other ideas for episodes to do in the near future that I just can't get them done. But anyway, in the meantime, we get to talk about all of this stuff behind the scenes. So if you're interested in joining the club, definitely check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in some awesome merch, check out the link in the description. We've got the Tesla Bot t-shirt, which is super popular these days. Don't mess with Tesla. Lots of other t-shirts, tumblers, mugs, etc. So check out the link in the description and help the channel out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $2,300. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how clicking on a link and going shopping for a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. And as always, feel free to ask me questions in the comments or at my email address, which is drknowitallknows@gmail.com. Till next time, bye-bye.